Hello, and welcome to Dark Hearts with Stacey Lee. Before we begin, please hit the like button if you like the video. It helps so much with the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me. It is rough here. You guys know that as well as I do. And every little bit of support helps. Still here in the temporary studio. Jason will be home in about a week to finish the studio that's being constructed. And we're going to get back to normal. And I have some really cool things planned. I'm excited. Today I have for you a story about a serial killer that not many people have heard of. And I think a large part of that is because he preyed on the throwaway people. We talk about this all the time here on Dark Hearts. Every single life matters, but justice is often not dealt out as if every life matters, right? Some victims get all the attention, some victims get no attention at all. There is an area in Seattle called the Jungle. It's an undeveloped area full of brambles and very thick brush. This is the Pacific Northwest. It's very green, and it is home to a lot of unhoused people, a lot of people that are without homes. It is not uncommon to find dead bodies in the jungle. But when women started turning up dead and they all had something very specific in common, the Seattle PD realized they had a problem. This is the story of serial killer DeWayne Lee Harris, sometimes called the Seattle Jungle Killer, but most often called Chilly Willy. I'm your host, Stacey Lee. Let's begin. Our story begins in the jungle in Seattle. This is a place where freeway overpasses crisscross in the sky. Cars race above the ground, going from one place to the next, but never stopping in the jungle. This is an area most people don't want to be in. There is a section of the jungle where on one side of the street there are mechanics shops and machinist shops. And then on the other side of the street there are tents, little shanties, shelters built by people that don't have a home. Jason and I lived in Silverdale, Washington, just outside of Seattle for about a year while he built a Winco there. And it is a thickly forested, very lush, very green area. The only way to stop the foliage from covering everything is to bury it in concrete and asphalt. Under the overpasses is left in its natural state. And so the vines climb up the steel structures and the ground is covered with thick brambles and bushes and grasses. The jungle is actually a green belt on the western slopes of Beacon Hill near the south end of downtown Seattle. Thick blackberry brambles intertwine with vines and maple trees in this urban forest. There are a lot of people living very meager lives in the jungle, which is actually quite a pretty area. These homeless camps in Seattle, because of the humidity and the very mild weather, it never gets super, super cold and it never gets really, really hot. It's the perfect climate for rats. And when I tell you these homeless camps are infested with rats, there is an area of downtown Seattle near Central Saloon that Jason and I would spend a lot of time at. Central Saloon is kind of where the grunge movement was born. There is a tent encampment right there in the middle of town. And there's a little fenced in area. You know where the fences are only about that tall? They just put them up so people won't walk on the trees and the grass. The burrows, the size of the burrows and the size of these rats. You are walking by with your ice cream or your burger or whatever, and there are rats this big just running in and out of these burrows right on the sidewalk. I am a person who has spent a lot of time working with the homeless. I understand their plight. I feel a lot of empathy for people that live that way. I also feel for the business owners, and I also feel for people that want to be in the area and enjoy those historical areas without smelling human waste and being accosted by people asking for money. It's a tough situation. I feel for everyone involved, and all I know is that we're failing miserably. We're failing the shop owners, we're failing the tourists, and we're failing the homeless people. But I also get really frustrated when people blame this politician or that politician for homelessness. Homelessness has been a problem since after the Great Depression. Homelessness in America is nothing new. There have been human beings living unhoused in the jungle since the 1930s. And since that time, it has not been uncommon to find a dead body in the jungle. Sometimes people die from getting hit by cars. There's a lot of cross streets that you have to take to get from the freeway to the jungle. Sometimes they die of disease. Sometimes they die of exposure. Sometimes they die of overdose. The jungle is a desperate place for desperate people. From time to time, it seems like about every 4 or 5 years, the authorities will come in and raise the camps. They come in and just clear everything out. They bring in bulldozers. They push everybody out, but they always find their way back because we don't really fix the problem, you know. I did a lot of reading about the people that actually live in the jungle. They sleep in shifts. Especially if there's a woman in the group, in the friend group, because women are not safe there. Not only do they sleep in shifts because of the crime, they sleep in shifts because of the rats. There are stories of drunks passing out and they wake up to have one of their eyeballs eaten out by a rat. They've been so unconscious that the rat did not wake them up, and then when they wake up, they're missing an eye. Like, that is, that's a horror story. The violence in the jungle has become so bad that women will actually pay for protection, you know, with whatever means they can, which is usually with their bodies. It's an infamous area, it's a lawless area, and it's a very dangerous area. In the fall of 1997, 42-year-old Denise Marie Harris was walking along First Avenue in Seattle. As she sat on a bench for rest, 2 men walked up and began talking with Denise. Denise knows what they want, and she's willing to give it to them if they have drugs. So she gets up and she begins to walk with the men. As soon as they are out of view, Denise is attacked. Her clothing is torn off of her body, and her own belt is used to strangle her to death. Now, I need to tell you, it comes out later in the story that there are most likely not 2 men involved, just one. After Denise is dead, the killer sexually assaults her, and then he employs his signature move. He removes Denise's shoelaces and uses them to tie her hands behind her back. Her bra is then stuffed into her mouth very violently, halfway down her throat, and her body is dragged into the bushes. She is dumped like garbage, and her body is not found until the 12th, several days later, when a transient man is walking through the area looking for bottles and cans. Denise had been a school teacher. She had a fiance. She had a home. She had a life. And then she got addicted to drugs. Her addiction got worse and worse. She got fired from her job. And then she very quickly spiraled into a life of addiction, living on the streets. Denise's mother was informed of her death, and she was absolutely devastated. Everyone in Denise's life really felt like there was a good chance she could turn things around. She would come home from time to time and check in, and they saw glimpses of the old Denise. And then this monster, this killer, took that chance away from her when he took her life. When Denise's body was found, her belt was still around her neck. Her murder had been brutal and sadistic. Someone had taken their time killing her, strangling her, and they had enjoyed what they did. The cops investigated for a week, and then a month, and then soon the case was stone cold. A call comes into the Seattle Police Department. It is a bitterly cold day in the Pacific Northwest, about as cold as it gets up there. The wind coming off the water cut like a knife, and even the homeless people had hunkered down, you know, in their little encampments trying to stay warm. It was too cold to even walk around. One man is braving the cold, and he's out looking for scrap metal to sell. And instead he finds a body. The man calls the police and they arrive quickly. He leads them to a staircase that goes down into an old industrial building. Sitting at the base of that staircase is a very small woman. She is sitting upright with her head all the way slumped over. Her head hangs down over her body and her long black hair is in her lap. The police do not go into the stairwell. They wait for the coroner to get there. But as they wait, they stand above and look down into the stairwell, and they can see that Denise is sitting on a bloody mattress, and blood has run down her hair and onto her arms and her hands. The man who called the police, the transient, is now sitting in the back of a police car, and the cops notice that he has some blood on him. They wait for the medical examiner to get there, and then they bring the body up out of the stairwell and lay it down on the sidewalk. The woman is wearing several pairs of pants, which is common for homeless people. They carry everything they own on their back. She is soaked in blood and she is missing one of her shoes. Also, her shoelaces have been taken out of those shoes. The woman is young, she's very petite, she's Native American. One of the cops even notes that she looks like a teenager. She has a devastating slash wound to her neck, a wound that no one could survive. And the coroner quickly states that this is probably going to be an exsanguination. She probably bled to death. The woman has no identification on her, and at the time, the cops did not think much of the shoelaces, but later on that would become a big deal. The medical examiner wraps the body up and takes it away for autopsy. The detectives then turn their attention to the man that called in the body. He's a transient and he lives in the jungle. The man tells them that he knew about this particular stairwell, that it's a good place to sleep. He said he was tired, and so he went there. He was planning on walking down the stairs, laying down on the mattress that's down there. Oh, that just kind of gives me the willies. Oh my, why am I the worst at making bad puns? But he saw that this woman was sitting there and he yelled to her, hey, she didn't move. He figured she was on drugs and she had passed out. So the man leaves and he's looking for scrap metal, and then he comes back an hour later, and not only is the woman still there, she's in the exact same position. So he walks down a couple of the stairs and he gets kind of, in this position and looks up at her, and that's when he sees that her throat is slashed. The police say, well, it's a little strange because you have blood on your clothing. Did you get that on your clothing when you looked at the woman? And he said, oh, no, that's my blood. He tells the cops that he'd been in a fight with two other homeless men earlier in the day, and they'd kind of beat each other up. And he's like, this is my blood. You can take my sweatshirt. You can test it. The cops do exactly that. They give the man something else to wear. They take his sweatshirt, they test the blood, and take a sample from his finger. It comes back as the same blood. The next day, the coroner tells the police that he has identified the body. The woman had been arrested before, and so her fingerprints were on file. She is 27-year-old Olivia Smith. The coroner could not give an exact date of death because it was so bitterly cold. There was a really good possibility that the cold had preserved her body. She could have been dead for a day. She could have been dead for 4 days. Olivia had been arrested for prostitution. She'd been arrested for illegal drugs. Her life was short and it was violent and tragic. Her police record noted that she had been the victim of beatings several times by the Johns that she picked up. Her cause of death was exsanguination. She had bled to death from the wound on her throat, and she had also been stabbed several times. She'd been stabbed in the chest, and then she'd been stabbed 7 times in the buttocks. This is very strange to the police. They don't see stab wounds in the buttocks. If someone's going to stab somebody, it's going to be in the vital organs. This almost seems like a mutilation of some kind, They thought somebody did this for fun. Somebody was enjoying the stabbing. Some of the cops even ask each other, do you think, there was torture involved? Do you think somebody tortured her? Olivia has a tattoo on her arm about right here that says Taylor. The cops find Olivia's family and they make the death notification. Her family, of course, is devastated. The family tells the officers that Olivia had been in a very violent relationship with a man named Taylor Shaw. This, of course, has got to be the Taylor that she's got tattooed on her arm. Now, fortunately, Olivia had filed a restraining order against Taylor Shaw at some point, so the police were able to track him down. Taylor Shaw has an active warrant for his arrest, which gives the police an excuse to bring him in. Well, there's a problem. They get Taylor Shaw in the interrogation room, and the guy goes, I'm actually not Taylor Shaw. My name is something else. I just said I was Taylor because I have a warrant. The police are like, well, we want to talk to Taylor about a murder. And he's like, whoa, I got nothing to do with this. So they actually had the wrong guy. They find Taylor Shaw, they bring him in for questioning, but as all of this is happening, a call comes in and the police find out another body has been found. Again, a transient man is walking in the area looking for bottles and cans to sell, and instead he finds a human skeleton. He calls the police arrive and follow the man to the back of an old warehouse that's abandoned. At first, they don't see what the man is talking about. They see like dead leaves, a big pile of dead leaves. And he's like, get a little closer. They're kind of hesitant because, hello, you're not supposed to trample a crime scene, but they get a little bit closer and then they see the skull. And they see that the skeleton is wearing a kind of torn up pair of pants and bits of a shirt, a flannel shirt. The mouth of the skull is wide open, like as wide open as it can get, and wrapped around what's left of the jaw and the back of the head is a gag, a piece of cloth that was used for a gag. The detectives call the coroner, but they also call in a forensic anthropologist Forensic anthropologists are used to dealing with bones, and so when skeletons are found in these bigger cities where the cops have access to someone like a forensic anthropologist, they bring them in because they might catch things that a coroner would miss. A coroner's used to dealing with a whole body. Forensic anthropologists are used to looking at bones. So the forensic anthropologist arrives on the scene and they tell the police that the body has been there for at least several months. I always, in my mind, think that it takes like years for a body to become a skeleton. And I always forget. I don't know why that isn't something that I can't get in my head. It doesn't take years for a skeleton to become from a human body. I have to constantly remind myself of that. Maybe this story will be the thing that finally gets it into my brain. Skeletonized remains can take place relatively quickly. The anthropologist tells them that it is a female, and there's also a little bit of hair left on the skull, which they're hopeful maybe that will help them make an identification. There's also multiple pairs of pants, which indicates, again, this is probably a homeless person. So photos are taken, and then the anthropologist says to the police, we'd like to move the leaves and then roll the body over. You know, have you taken enough photos? And they said yes. So they clear the leaves. They roll the body over, and the cops cannot believe their eyes. The wrists of the skeleton are crossed and bound with shoelaces. At that moment, these cops know Seattle has a serial killer. They now have two bodies that are bound at the wrists with their own shoelaces, and Olivia Smith's shoelaces at the bottom of the staircase had been removed. There's also something else. You can stand at one of the dump sites and see the other two. So from Olivia's dump site, you can see Denise's. From Denise's, you can see the skeletonized remains. From Olivia's, you can see the skeletonized remains. Not maybe on a dead line. I mean, maybe you can't see the actual ground, but it is literally like a little triangle. Next to the skeletonized remains is a grocery bag, and in that grocery bag are some documents. Among the documents is a summons to appear in court, and it has a name on it. The name on the summons is Antoinette Jones, and her story is just like the other two. She is a prostitute, she is addicted to drugs, and she lived in the jungle. Antoinette had a family that loved her, she had a home, she had a child, but she got addicted to drugs, and before long she was living on the streets. People in Antoinette's family called her Tony, but on the streets she was known as TJ. Tony had a beautiful singing voice, and at one point she had tried to pursue a career as a singer. She'd moved to Colorado. Things seemed to be going really well for her. And then her brother, that she was very close to, came home from Iraq, and he had really bad PTSD, and he ended up taking his own life. And Tony never recovered from that. It did something to her. She went from kind of recreational drug use to being a full-on addict. Her family told the police that they had not seen her in months. They were, heartbroken to learn that she was dead, but they weren't really shocked because they knew how she had been living. As the anthropologists look at the bones a little bit further, they tell the cops they believe Tony was probably killed in August of '97. Word begins to spread through the jungle that somebody is moving through it, killing women. Word begins to spread about the shoelaces, and people start to hear word that there is a serial killer on the loose. Denise and Antoinette, Tony, had been strangled to death. Even Tony's body that was just a skeleton, they knew that because the hyaloid bone was broken. Olivia had been stabbed to death, and the police begin to develop a theory. The cops see some wounds on Olivia's hands that look as though she might have slipped on the knife of a blade. And so they theorized that Olivia pulled the knife on her killer, and the killer then took the knife away from her and used it against her. They continue to investigate, and several weeks go by before they get a break. But when they get a break, it's a good one. One of the detectives is at his desk, and a call comes to his desk. It's an inmate that's in jail, and he tells them he knows who the serial killer is. In fact, he tells them he was with the serial killer when he killed Denise. The man says, I want to get out of jail, and I will help you in any way I can if you'll get me out of jail. The cop is very suspicious. Jailhouse snitches, sometimes they're telling the truth, sometimes they're not. And so this guy tells the cop, I know something you don't. I know where Denise's purse is. So the cop is like, okay, if this guy really knows where her purse is, I'm going to go talk to him. And the guy asks the cop to bring him a cappuccino, not a cappuccino, a cappuccino. So the cop gets this guy a cappuccino, and he goes to the jail. And he walks in, and at the interview table sits a man named DeWayne Harris. DeWayne Lee Harris goes by the nickname Chilly Willy. Chilly Willy is a cartoon character. It's a little penguin who is always cold. He's always shivering and freezing. Chilly Willy, the cartoon character, was created in 1953 by Paul Lantz. There are 50 Chilly Willy cartoons. I've never seen one. Well, DeWayne Lee Harris is every bit as cold-hearted as a half-frozen penguin. The nickname is definitely fitting the person. DeWayne tells the cops that a man named Mike Smith is the person that killed Denise. I mean, dude, if you're gonna come up with a name, Adam Jones, Mike Smith, I mean, those are the two most common American names in the world. Chilly Willy tells the cops that he and Mike were walking with Denise and they were gonna do a deal. She was gonna give them sex and they were gonna give her drugs, but then Mike went crazy and attacked Denise. Chilly Willy then tells the cops, I'm not lying, I will take you to where Denise was dumped. So they put him in a car and they want to see if he knows where Denise's body was found, and he takes them right to the site. Not the vicinity, the actual site, the ground where Denise's body was found. Then the cops ask, where is her purse? And he nods his head and he goes, back there behind me in the trees. He says, I remember where her purse is because I walked it back into the trees and I tossed it. And when I came out of the trees, I hit my head on a beer can that somebody had stabbed a branch through. Well, one of the cops, the hair on the back of his neck stands up because he remembers at Denise's dump site scene on the day she was found, he saw a beer can with a branch stabbed through it, and he thought, that just looks kind of weird, I'm gonna take a picture of it. So this cop had a photo of the beer can with a branch stabbed through it, and Chilly Willy is talking about that exact same thing. So at this point, they're like, this guy was here. Chilly Willy continues to insist that he is not the killer, it's Mike Smith, and the cops do not believe him. They say, who is Mike Smith? And Chilly Willy tells them he's a black man, he's about 6'1", he's got a mustache, he's got a thin build. He's basically describing himself. The cops take DeWayne Lee Harris, Chilly Willy, back to the station, and they gather every photograph of every Mike Smith they can find in the downtown Seattle area. And they show him every single one of those Mike Smiths, and Chilly Willy says, no, that's none of them. He's not in any of those photographs. He obviously didn't want them to bring somebody in named Mike Smith and have that person be like, I have no idea who this person is. At this point, the cops are like, sure, DeWayne, sure. By pure coincidence, I love it when these things happen in these stories. These two detectives that are on the case of the serial killer are out driving around investigating some leads, and another cop calls them and says, hey, I've got a prostitute with some information on my murder case, a completely different case. You guys are in the area. Would you stop and pick her up and bring her into the station for me? And they're like, sure. So they pick this young woman up and she's sitting in the back of the car and they're telling her, you know, we can get you help. We can help you get out of this lifestyle, the whole bit. You've had to have had some bad experiences. And she says, you know, I really have. One recently really scared me. And they're like, well, what happened? She tells the cops, I go with this guy. We're going to do a deal. I'm totally naked. And this guy takes my shoelaces out of my shoes and tries to tie me up with them. The cops cannot believe what they are hearing. The woman says, I was so scared. He was trying to beat me up and I ran naked. I had to run naked into the street for help. The cops are looking at each other like, this cannot be happening. We just randomly picked up this person that has nothing to do with our case, a completely different case over here, and she's giving us this information about our serial killer. The cops ask the woman, well, what was the John's name? And she says, well, his name's DeWayne, but everybody calls him Chilly Willy. The cops are the first to know for sure. DeWayne Lee Harris is a serial killer. They put the next couple of weeks putting their case together. DeWayne's already in jail on another offense. He's not going anywhere. So they put their ducks in a row, they get everything planned, and then they make their move. The Seattle police have brought their suspect into the police department for an interrogation. He sits in this little interview room smoking a cigarette. He's very calm, cocky, leaning back in his chair, not a care in the world. The cop said, on the night you killed Denise, what were you doing? And surprisingly, he starts to talk. He tells them, I was out looking for my prey. One of the cops says, what was the plan? And Chilly Willy replies, murder, man. Murder, 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 murder. He tells the cops, yeah, I killed Denise, I killed Antoinette, and I killed that bitch in the staircase too. The police go through the timeline with the killer. He says he killed Antoinette first. He tells them that TJ, as he knew her, ripped him off. She didn't remember him. He said he went and found her on the streets, lured her to his playground. He calls it his playground. Tells her he has drugs, he wants sex for drugs. She follows him into the playground. And then when he gets her there, he says, do you remember me? And she says, no, I don't know you. And he says, well, you should. You ripped me off. And then he tells them how he murdered TJ. The cops say, why do you call it your playground? And he says, that's my area, man. And they said, why do you like that area? And he says, because no one can hear you scream. He tells them that he punched Antoinette very hard in the face and then began to strangle her. She begged for her life, telling him that she was a mother and she didn't want to die. DeWayne says he told her, now's not the time to be thinking about your kids. Now's the time for you to die. The cops asked DeWayne Lee Harris, when do you feel your best? And he says, when I'm killing. The cops ask him, what would happen if we let you out tomorrow? And he says, you'd have 4 more bodies on your hands. Notice he said 4. The cops are convinced there are more victims. Then Chilly Willy tells the cops that he told Olivia Smith he had crack cocaine and he wanted to go down in the stairwell and smoke it with her. When they got down there, Chilly Willy tried to sexually assault Olivia and she pulled a knife on him. It's just like the cops theorized. He took the knife from her and he used it against her. This man is a cold-blooded psychopath. He has no empathy. He has no concern for human life. He has no feeling. He's like a reptile. He's a terrifying human being, and I think it's probably best if you see for yourself.
People die every day. What am I supposed to say? I'm supposed to say, I feel sorry for somebody? No, I don't.
From the ultra-high security 11th floor of the King County Jail, DeWayne Lee Harris says he has few feelings for the 3 women he's accused of murdering. 3 killings investigators say happened near a wooded area east of downtown Seattle known as the Jungle.
I'm not saying that it's not true, and I'm not saying that it's true.
But investigators say Harris confessed to the murders to them in early May, telling detectives, I just get a thrill for killings. 3 killings since last September. The first found strangled to death, the remains of another found in early February, and the third later that month found at the bottom of a stairwell at a business near the Jungle. Detectives say Harris admitted tying up the victims' hands with their shoelaces before killing them.
They was used to tie up, put it in that order.
The shoelaces?
Yes.
Each of these women?
That I know of.
Perhaps most intriguing is the accused killer's reference to other murders. After a detective asks, if I were to let you walk out this door right now, Harris says there'd be 4 more body bags. The detective asks him, you are what? And Harris's reply, I'm a killer.
For 3 bodies, you might got 32 more.
Harris hinted to us he's committed 32 other murders. But to the direct question about the 3 murders he's accused of, did you kill these women?
That's only between me and God and the state of Washington.
This man preyed on women who were down on their luck, who were addicted, and who were desperate. These women were totally without love and protection on the streets, but they were not totally without love. They had people that loved them. They had parents, they had siblings, they had friends. These women might have turned their lives around. They could have become drug counselors for other addicts in the future. They could have become professionals. They could have become teachers. But DeWayne Lee Harris took all of those chances away from them. Chilly Willy went on trial in December of 1998. He was charged with 3 counts of murder and he was sentenced to 94 years in prison.
Throughout much of his trial, DeWayne Lee Harris was forced to sit in a security chair. The judge ordered him restrained after several courtroom outbursts. But when she read the verdict, Harris was uncharacteristically silent.
We, the jury, find the defendant, DeWayne Lee Harris, guilty of the crime of murder in the 1st degree, as charged in count 1.
Guilty 3 times of stabbing or strangling 3 women, then dumping their bodies in a wooded area near I-5 known as the Jungle. Harris may have been quiet in the courtroom, but once outside, he turned defiant and very talkative.
Hey, the state, they lied, they kept up their own, and they lied, and they won. So I figured if they win, let them have theirs. Let them have theirs. It ain't won yet. Still got my appeal.
Harris indicates he wants to appeal, but on what basis? He had confessed to the killings to police and in court.
Well, that was the problem, the confessions. The confessions, however, did not look right when you properly analyze them.
If there is an appeal, prosecutors think Harris may try to use his unpredictable behavior to his advantage.
I think he deserves more credit than he's received for being fairly crafty about his behavior.
33 months.
Strapped to a restraining chair with his arms and ankles tied, the court was expecting a violent outburst from Harris, but once again, the convicted serial killer did the unexpected.
I just asked for the families of these victims for forgiveness.
It was the first time ever that Harris apologized. He had never shown remorse for the violent murders he confessed to and called murdering women a hobby.
The system can have their 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
But, Harris told the judge, putting him away for life wouldn't bring justice to the victims' families.
I'm still walking the yard, and I still got radios, TVs. I'm still gonna kick it. So let's go on with my sentence.
With that, the judge sentenced Harris to 95 years in prison, an idea that seemed to delight the serial killer.
People just admitted it for the attention. Like
Harris's ex-girlfriend says he's innocent, and that his courtroom outburst during the trial and even his confession were just ploys for attention.
the places that the things that he told on wasn't even accurate. You know what I'm saying? DeWayne, he lies a lot. You know, and so he's gonna do his attention if he can get it.
So I think he did crave attention. I think he wanted notoriety, and I think he finally got what he wanted.
Today he sits at the Stafford Creek Correction Center. He's around 61 years old. He claims he cannot remember when his birthday is. He could live for decades behind bars, and I hope he does. He hates prison, and we love that for him. He is exactly where he should be. Thank you for joining me today on Dark Hearts with Stacey Lee. I want to tell you guys something. It has been really a rough summer. I hired a promoter to try to break through this algorithm wall that I just cannot seem to get past. He says he's never seen anything like this. He reads you guys' comments. He's like, you have such a loyal base of people that love you, and normally your channel should be growing. He says, I do not know what's happening here. I was working with another promoter that I thought took my money and disappeared, but it ended up that he was mixed up in the Bangladesh. Did you see how Bangladesh lost their internet for like 5 or 6 days? So then I'm all up in a tizzy thinking this guy had taken, thousands of dollars from me and disappeared. And so I, was all upset about that, only to find out that his country has been in turmoil. Then the other promoter is telling me, I have helped so many channels, and he's like, it looks like you've done everything that I would tell you to do. I just don't know why your channel isn't growing. I'm not complaining. Oh, whoops, I just kicked my stand. I'm not complaining because I am so grateful for every single one of you, but the frustration level, I even feel it from you guys. Like, you guys tell me you're frustrated. I just want the community to grow. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it would be nice if I could make a little bit of a living. I mean, I've been working for free for 4 years, and I really don't want to continue doing that. It would be nice if I, could pay myself a little bit. But if our community doesn't grow, we can't reach our goals. I can't raise the money that I want to raise. And that is really why I started this channel. It has been hard, I'm not gonna lie to you, to hear somebody. There's a place where you hire these freelance promoters. It's called Upwork. This guy has 1,000 clients. He's got a 5-star review. He's worked with tons and tons of channels. He's got a list of big channels he's worked with. And he's like, I am a little baffled. He's like, I am a little baffled. I said, is it because I'm old? Do people not want to watch me because I'm old? And he's like, no. He's like, that gives you more credibility, I would think, He just honestly cannot tell me what's happening. I've reached out to 3 really big creators. I'm not going to name them because I'm not trying to start anything. I've said, let me pay you. Can I pay you for a mention? Not one of them has emailed me back. I don't know, if I was a big creator and a smaller creator emailed me and said, can I get a shout out? I would do it without getting paid. Doc did it for me on Serial Killer Documentary. I'd probably still have 3,000 subs if it weren't for Doc. So Doc did it out of the goodness of his heart. And I can't even get some of these big creators to let me pay them to give me a shout out. So I don't know, I'm frustrated, but it's hard for me to talk about this with you guys because I want you to know how grateful I am, and I don't ever want to come off like I'm not grateful for each and every one of you. But it's like, you know, the definition of insanity is doing something over and over and expecting different results. I'm 4.5 years into this, and it's just, the channel's just not growing. I've tried everything I can think of, and I'm just kind of stuck. I'm just kind of at a loss. I'm gonna keep plugging away. If you like the video, please hit like, please subscribe, please tell your friends about the channel. You can join my Patreon for a few dollars a month. It definitely helps keep the videos coming. And you can also join the fundraiser. This is the video on my channel that explains the entire fundraiser. Just watch this 2-minute video and it explains everything we're doing. We're trying to solve some cold cases. I've also got 2 podcasts. I've got Dining with Death. This is an archival series. It's just the audio taken from the videos before I rebranded the channel. And this is the current podcast, Dark Hearts with Stacey Lee. I release new episodes every Monday and Wednesday. The podcasts are actually doing really well. In fact, the promoter told me, he's like, maybe you should just quit YouTube altogether and just do the podcasts. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm considering it because, you know, this is a lot of work. And the podcasts are a lot less work. You know, I don't have to find the images. I don't have to find the video clips. I don't have to spend an hour and a half doing this to my face. So I don't know. I mean, I want to stay. I just, something's got to change. But what it really does mean is that each and every one of you are even that much more important to me because you're here, you know? So, you know me, I'm very open about what's going on, and I just wanted to kind of spill it. There's definitely some transitional things taking place with the studio being built, and you know, some things will be changing a little bit with the format of the channel when I get into the new studio. And I guess for now I just keep plugging along. I hope you're well, and I hope you're enjoying your summer, and I really, really hope that you're happy and healthy. Stay safe, my friends, and be kind to each other, and I will see you next time on Dark Hearts with Stacey Lee. Bye.